Today we're going to be talking about the Good Samaritan, and it's found in Luke chapter 10, verses 25 to 37, and we're going to start by reading verses 25 to 28. And it says, "And behold, a certain lawyer stood up and tested him," that is Jesus, saying, Teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life? He said to him, What is written in the law? What is your reading of it? So he answered and said, You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. And he said to him, You have answered rightly. Do this, and you will live. So a lawyer stands up and asks Jesus how to get to heaven. He says, What shall I do to inherit eternal life? And Jesus' response is, What does the Bible say? Specifically, he says, What is written in the law? What is your reading of it? So he's basically asking this lawyer, what does the Bible say? What has God told you? And what does it mean? And the lawyer says, he's quoting the Old Testament, and he says, You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. And these are found in Deuteronomy 6:5 and Leviticus 19:18. And this is the summary of the law that Jesus gives in Matthew 22. And he's saying that Jesus said himself that the greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God. And then the second greatest commandment was to love your neighbor. And this is the summary of the law. This is obviously not the particulars, but if you boil it down to the main idea is that we should love God and love others. Now, he is correct in saying that the way to heaven is to love the Lord your God perfectly, because it says all your heart, all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. The problem is we are not capable of doing this. We fall short in doing this perfectly because we are sinful. Adam sinned, and likewise we have all sinned just as Adam sinned, and we are incapable of loving the Lord our God with all of our heart. That means all our desires, all our emotions, all our soul, even all of our spiritual thoughts, everything like that, all of our strength, everything we do, and with all of our mind, all of our thoughts and thoughts life. We obviously do not do that. We've all had wrong desires. We've all had wrong thoughts. We've all done wrong things. So we obviously fall short of that. And we fall short of loving our neighbor as ourselves because we're proud, we are envious, we are selfish. So hypothetically, if we were perfect, we would not need salvation. And that is what this verse is saying, that if you were to love the Lord your God with everything you have and your neighbor, you were perfect, you would not need salvation. But we cannot do that. So it's no use for us to try and to gain salvation from doing things like this, from trying to do works to save us, because we do not follow this command. We do not love God totally and perfectly, and we do not love others totally or perfectly. So the lawyer is correct in saying that if we were to do this, we would receive eternal life because we wouldn't need any salvation. But nobody except for Jesus Christ himself has fulfilled this, and that's why Jesus didn't need saved, because he was perfect and loved the Lord perfectly and loved the neighbor as himself. He was God, so he did not need any salvation. But Jesus' response here reveals this, and he says, You've answered rightly. Do this and you will live. So he's saying if you did all this perfectly, you would be saved. But obviously, the lawyer didn't do that, and none of us do that as well. So we're going to read verses 29 to 37 and see how Jesus explains this. But he, that is the lawyer, wanting to justify himself, said to Jesus, And who is my neighbor? Then Jesus answered and said, A certain man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and fell among thieves, who stripped him of his clothing, wounded him, and departed, leaving him half dead. Now by chance a certain priest came down that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. Likewise a Levite, when he arrived at the place, came and looked and passed by on the other side. But a certain Samaritan, as he journeyed, came where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion. So he went to him, bandaged his wound, pouring on oil and wine, and he set him on his own animal, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. On the next day, when he departed, he took out 2 denarii, gave him to the innkeeper, and said to him, Take care of him, and whatever more you spend, when I come again, I will repay you. So which of these 3 do you think was neighbor to him who fell among the thieves? And he says, He who showed mercy on him. Then Jesus said to him, Go and do likewise. So this is Jesus' response to the lawyer. The lawyer basically wants to look better. He wants to look good in front of Jesus, and he says, well, who's my neighbor? So he's basically implying here that he has loved God perfectly and that he just needs to love his neighbor perfectly. And he's trying to get a cop-out here by just trying to love the people that he has to. So this shows the selfishness in his own heart, showing that he hasn't fulfilled the commandments that he needs to, because he's just trying to get the easy way out instead of doing it for love for God and out of a right heart. So this shows again that he cannot fill these commandments and that he needs saved by grace through faith, just like we do. And Jesus responds by telling a story, and he tells this story about a person that was walking on the road to from Jerusalem to Jericho, and thieves came and took everything that he had. It says that they stripped him of his clothing, they wounded him, and departed, leaving him half dead. So this guy had absolutely nothing left, and he was just lying there waiting to die. And the point of this, next in the story is a priest comes, which was considered the holiest of men in the religious system of the day. The Israelites would have thought, oh man, this priest was coming, he's going to certainly help this man. But it says that the priest came down the road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. So even the holiest of people to the Jews passed by and did not help the person that was wounded. And likewise, a Levite came, and this was an aid to the priest, and he also would have been seen as good to the Israelite people, but he also passed by on the other side. But then verse 33 says, a certain Samaritan, as he journeyed, came where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion on him. So this Samaritan is somebody that was hated by the Jews. He was the outcast of the society. Samaritans were kind of the half-bloods of the Jews, and they were considered unrighteous and basically like the rest of the world. They were despised, and they would not even pass. The Jews would not even pass through Samaria when they went somewhere because they were just so despising of the Samaritans. But Jesus points out here that it's not the holy people, the thought holy people that puff themselves up that are fulfilling it. It's the Samaritan here that's doing it. He shows compassion. It says that he acknowledged the person, so he knew that he was there. He bandaged him, so he was giving him first aid with the oil and the wine for his wounds, and he put him on his own animal, and he paid for his hotel. And then beyond that, he said to the person taking care of him, if there's any extra, I will take care of it. I will pay you tomorrow. So Jesus' question here is, verse 36, so which of these 3 do you think was neighbor to him who fell among the thieves? And the answer here is obviously the Samaritan. And the lawyer answers and said, he who showed mercy on him. He wouldn't even say the Samaritan because it was so despising to him. So he says, he who had mercy on him, instead of saying the Samaritan. But Jesus says, go and do likewise. And the point here is that he could not do enough. Like, he was not holy enough. He was revealing the sin in this man's life that he did not want to help his neighbor. Like I said in verse 29, he's saying, and who is my neighbor? He's trying to get out of it. And Jesus reveals the sin and says, go and do likewise, which the lawyer is obviously thinking, I don't want to do that. And he's revealing that he has not fulfilled the commandments like he thought. And similarly today, a lot of us think, well, we are good people, so we can go to heaven. Like we believe in God, we go to church every once in a while, and we give to God, and we're nice to people. But Jesus here is revealing the sin that is in our hearts, that we really have a lot more sin than we think, that we do not love our neighbor as ourselves, and that's revealed through this parable here, that we don't have mercy on people. And he's also revealing that because we don't have mercy on other people, we don't love other people, we also do not love the Lord our God with everything we have. Even Christians who have been saved by God's grace through faith alone, we don't love God perfectly with everything that we have. And that does not excuse that we shouldn't do it. But we are still have battle with sin, and that shows our reliance on God's grace for salvation. So what should we learn from here? This story, we should learn that trying to be righteous on our own is useless, and we must perfectly trust and love God, because it is only by God's grace through faith that we can be saved, because we obviously fall short of God's commands here. Just 2 of his commands are to love the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, strength, and mind, and love our neighbor as ourselves. And that's only 2 commands that we fall short of. There's over 600 given in the Old Testament that obviously the Jews would have fallen short of. We fall short of all the commands that we follow today. And that is obvious that we need God's grace because we do not perfectly fulfill God's commands. And that's why it's important that Jesus came and did live a perfect life, because he did fill up what was missing in us, that we do not perfectly fulfill God's commands. And that's why Jesus could be the perfect sacrifice for us, because he was perfect and needed no salvation, so he could redeem unperfect people through faith. What else should we learn? We should learn that those who love God, that is, those people who have been saved through faith, will love others. So the result of God's love being shown in us, God's love being received in us, and that we came to Christ, is that we will love others, just as the Samaritan loved the person that was beaten up and almost dying. And loving others will cost us time, convenience, money, and much more. So this is showing our love for God is for loving others and doing for others what we wish they would do for us. And this is showing God's mercy towards us, because God showed mercy to us even though we were dead and wounded from our sin. We were half dead. We needed to be saved by somebody to come and pick us up, and that's exactly what Jesus Christ did. He came and he gave us first aid. He gave us everything we needed, and he saved us by grace, and we should show that to others.